and welcome to Around the Paul. We're glad to be back. But not exactly happy with the result for the Clemson Tigers on Labor Day Monday night. But we're going to be here and talk all about it. And joining us tonight is our very special guest, Jake Crane with the Daily Wire and Crane and Company podcast. They do a great job. Check them out. And they talk about all things sports. And we're certainly glad, Jake, to have you here on the show tonight. And with the wealth of knowledge and insight that you can bring, it's always good to get an outside perspective on what we all see, what we saw Monday night. And so let's just jump right in and talk about the elephant in the room. It wasn't exactly a great showing for the Clemson Tigers on Monday night. I don't think anybody expected the game to quite go like it did. So from your perspective in your seat, what happened? What happened to the Clemson Tigers on Monday?
Yeah, well, number one, appreciate y'all having me. I obviously have watched, Dabo's work and what Clemson's done and the way they've risen up. It's been a lot of fun to watch. I know it's tough this week. You have all that buildup of the offseason. I mean, a bad year in Clemson now is winning 11 games. It's a high-class problem where I come from. But no, I know it's tough to go out there and watch a really weird game. I think Dabo hit it right on the head. I mean, he's coached a long time. You don't see teams lose games like that. You see maybe it's a one-possession game and you turn it over in the red zone at the end of the game and you lose it. We've seen that before. I mean, hell, I'm an Auburn fan. I've seen some of the craziest things in the world happen during the Iron Bowl. But that whole game was really wonky, and it's always a combination of things. Right, we always talk about the game comes down to a handful of plays, 5 to 7 plays typically. But the couple things that I saw, it truly is Garrett Riley's offense. Coach can say whatever he wants to say, but it's pretty much the exact same thing we saw at TCU, not only from a formational standpoint, from a personnel grouping standpoint, but from a tempo standpoint. And the part that confused me, and from a play calling and what Garrett was doing, was if you're going to go tempo in the red zone, especially in the green zone inside the 10, then go tempo. You were hurting them with it. What you were doing was you get your first down like a lot of these tempo teams do. Then we start running, right? You're able to move the ball. They didn't run a bunch of complicated stuff against Duke on Monday night. It was very RPO heavy. When they got in the split gun, they were having a lot of success running zone, running lead. Cade was able to kind of manipulate the defense. But when you get inside the 10 and you decide to slow it down, and then Duke decides they're going to run zero coverage, which means they man up everybody with no help, bring everybody to the box, and basically Trojan horse you in the middle and send everybody. How do you not pull the ball or have a check where there's some sort of rub route or some sort of bubble or something where you're getting the ball out of your hands? The first time and the only time they did it, they scored a touchdown to Will Shipley because all he did was run the slip or the bluff, however you want to frame it, off the play action and scored a touchdown. What Duke was doing, there's a reason Duke was hitting the ball carrier the minute he was getting the ball. It's called crashing the mesh. When you bring more than they can block, because when you look at the personnel in, they were in 11 personnel a lot, one running back, one tight end. You don't have a hat for a hat. So they were blowing up the mesh. One time, Cade messed up the handoff. The second time, they hit Maffa right when he got the ball. But if it's me and I'm going to hand it off and I'm going to slow it down, Will Shipley's touching the rock. Like this whole, I get it. Moffitt's kind of your heavier back, your short yardage back. Well, Will Shipley's your best back. And when you get in situations where you have to have it, as crazy as it sounds, because I believe Clemson should have better skill players. When Will Shipley's your best, and I like Will. Will's a really good player. But you're not beating Bama when Will Shipley is your best skill player. You're not beating Georgia. You're not beating Michigan. Hell, you couldn't beat Duke when you got inside the 10-yard line. He needs to touch the ball more in important downs. If you're going to be an up-tempo team, be an up-tempo team all the way through. It worked the one time you did it. You ran the play action off of it. And for the love of everything, when you get zero coverage and they're bringing everybody that's in Durham, North Carolina, you need to be able to spit the ball out and walk in for a touchdown. But Clemson's biggest problem to me right now isn't just the turnovers. It isn't just that Cade's still feeling out this new offense. It's where are all these skill players that when Clemson had an offensive line that was just above average, right? Clemson, to me, has never really had a dominant offensive line. We've seen dominant defensive lines. We've seen good Clemson offensive lines, but you had the Deshaun Watsons, the Trevor Lawrences, the Travis Etiennes, the Mike Williams, the T. Higgins, the Justin Rosses. Where are those guys? I mean, you had receivers that couldn't get separation if you had a restraining order from a judge in the state of South Carolina the other night. So I think that's the biggest problem. Dabo does probably need to reevaluate not only the way he goes about the transfer portal, but the way he goes about evaluating high school prospects, because I think he's missed on a lot of guys at the skill position, combining those two when you're not even using one of them.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think it's something that we all saw, and Clifton and I were there. We were on the sideline on Monday night at Wallace Wade Stadium, and it's something that just jumped right off the page to us. And when you look at the eye test, you're absolutely right, Jake. It just didn't seem like that these wide receivers could get the separation that they needed. But when we talk about wide receivers, and we've got Griffin Barfield as well here with us tonight, as always, and Clifton Kennedy. And I want to start with you guys and just work our way back to Jake and get his insight on this. You talk about the wide receivers and having the lack of separation or the ability to get that separation. You do have two guys that are coming in with the next recruiting class. And while it doesn't help you this year, you've got guys, TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco. For anybody who throws on the game film and watches these guys, they do appear to be that type of Clemson receiver of old, of the Nuke Hopkins, the Sammy Watkins ilk, that can just blow by people and get that separation. So if it's not going to help them this year, is it one thing, is help on the way? Is the cavalry coming?
For sure the cavalry's coming, but I think that, that's not going to help you this year. That's for sure. And, I think that watching the game, and obviously you guys had a better view of it than I did. I think that separation was probably one of the worst things that I saw. I mean, obviously, with special teams and miscues and just bad tackling as a whole. I think that creating separation was the biggest problem. And you had those third downs where you had to feed the ball off to Shipley or feed it off to Moffitt. But I think Jake said it perfectly. I think when Duke runs the box, you have to look for those guys, whether it be jump ball or create the smallest amount of space. I said Jake Briningstool was going to be the X factor. He had one catch. He had one target for 9 yards. You have to find him in the end zone there, especially against a Duke secondary that is on the smaller side. Don't get me wrong. They're an incredible secondary, but when the height's there, the height's there. So help is on the way, but you kind of have to, you can't just pray on next year for them to show up, especially when they're just freshmen. They're just going to develop. So I think, you still have a little bit more time before, you see the Bryant Wesco and the TJ Moore that, we all want to see and we all pretty much need at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to kind of go a different angle here. I mean, after that game, what is his deal with not using the transfer portal? Everybody's using it now. What is the deal? I don't understand. I know he wants to groom up young men. Okay, great. That's awesome. I want him to do that. That's how he's run his program for 15 years. But sometimes you have to adjust. And Deion Sanders did it with the portal. Everybody's doing it with the portal, it seems like. So why can't he adjust, or he's going to get left in the dust? That's how I feel. And so I don't know. What do you think, Jake?
Look, to me, I'll give you a great example. My grandmother's set in her ways, right? She's done things a certain way for her whole life. She's about 85 years old. She has a toaster that works about once every 3 to 4 times you use it. And I've told her, it's 2023, Grandma. I will buy you a new toaster. Not only that, I will buy you the best. I will buy you the Mercedes-Benz of toasters. Times are changing. You don't have to struggle with the toaster anymore. But she will not buy a new toaster regardless of how many times that I tell her. So either one of two things is going to happen. I'm either going to have to just sneak her a new toaster, or she's going to keep trying to use a toaster that doesn't work. And I think Dabo is to that point. Listen, when something's working and the way that you've done it, and you've taken a place that was good, and you raised the standard, and you've become the kind of the not the king of Clemson, but when you look at Clemson football, I mean, we talk about Coach Ford and all that, and that's great. But Dabo Swinney is the one that comes to mind now. You're a little nervous to adjust. But what makes Nick Saban so great? One of the many things, even when he gets to the top, he's malleable. He complains about the hurry up, no huddle offense. They're not going to change it. So what does he do? He goes and hires the best hurry up, no huddle offensive coordinators that they are. You adjust to the game. You play. It's just like personnel that you have, especially if you're a high school coach. You got to adjust to the personnel that you have sometimes. You got to change the scheme to fit the personnel. Well, Dabo has got, and I don't want this to just be about the transfer portal. He's missed on a lot of guys out of high school too. Like, this is a combination of not doing a great job evaluating skill players out of high school and refusing to go with the times. And it's easy to sit here and say, okay, Dabo, go use the transfer portal. Nobody's saying do what Dion did at Colorado. Nobody's saying tell everybody to leave and, that just, treat these kids like free agents. You don't want to, I think Colorado's the anomaly a little bit, and Texas State's the anomaly. Yeah. You don't want to build the whole ship out of the transfer portal. You want to plug leaks in the boat with it. That's why you use it. That's why all these places use it. Oh man, Bama just lost a first-round corner. They got a young guy on one side. Well, how about you go get Eli Ricks from LSU? Why don't you go do that? How about you go get one of these receivers after you lose a guy? That isn't some big stretch. That doesn't mean that you're a sellout. That doesn't mean that you don't care about kids. But at this point, Dabo is hurting the program by not doing it. And once it gets to that level, as much as everybody loves him, he is going to have to either come to terms with it, or he's not going to be at Clemson for another 3 to 4 years, because it's just not going to work. And the standard's been raised now. Y'all sip from the cup. You know what it tastes like. It's like drinking a good red wine, right? You drink a good red wine, you're not running the store buying some Franzia next week. You know what I'm saying? So to me, that's kind of where Clemson is right now.
Yeah. Right, Jake, and you hit the nail on the head. And one thing that when I go back and I replay, not just the game Monday night, but the last 2 years in my head, this was the palace that Dabo Swinney built. He built it his way. He did it the way that he wanted to do it, and he built it to the design that he envisioned. But sometimes things become obsolete. Sometimes you have to upgrade. And as fine as moral superiority is, and I do think he looks at it to a degree from a level of moral superiority and loyalty. Loyalty is great. Loyalty does not win football games, and particularly not in this landscape of college football. So you hit the nail on the head, but does Dabo Swinney ultimately conform? Does he ultimately realize that he either has to start using what everybody else is doing or get left behind, or is he so stuck in that way of thinking? Is he really willing? Would he go down with the ship that he built from the keel up just to say, I stood on the moral high ground and did not compromise some belief that I had? Does he do that? And would he be willing to throw it all away?
Well, I think it would take not a disastrous year, but a 3 to 4 loss season, really kind of come back down to reality. Because I think you have two worlds colliding. You have competitive Dabo that wants to win, that knows he can win, that's done it before, that the guy that's out there living and dying by every snap, every practice rep, that's as competitive as any player or any fan is that's attached to Clemson. And then you have moral Dabo, right? On the other side saying, no, I did it this way. I promised myself and I promised our, institution and these players I was going to do it this way. You have those two worlds colliding. So I don't know. I'm not in Dabo's head. I would like to think that competitive Dabo wins out, that he realizes, hey, if I want to stay in the good graces that I've built and has got here, I've got to be able to adjust. But that's such a personal decision between him and the players in the program that it would be pure conjecture right now. I mean, you're either going to be the guy that finds the lifeboat or plays the violin as the Titanic goes down. I mean, make your choice.
Yeah, absolutely right. And, as so many negatives to take away from Monday night, and I think it's rightly so that we focus on that, because, look, there was far more bad than there was good. We were there. We saw it. Anybody that sat and watched in their living rooms on television, they saw it. There's no hiding it, sugarcoating it, spraying any type of perfume over it. It was bad. But I think it's also probably not fair to focus entirely on the negative, because there were some good things that we saw come out of Monday as well, however few they might have been. So, Griffin, let's start with you. When you watched the game and as you watched it progress, what were some of the things that you saw that really were positives that you could build off of? I know a couple for me. I really thought T.J. Parker, the freshman defensive end, he played very, very well. He had a great ball game, and we saw some flashes, and we'd heard it all through fall camp. We talk about speed at wide receiver. Tyler Brown looked pretty good, and especially had a great catch down the sideline on one drive. And I think he could be a weapon that you explore using a little bit more in the future. So there are some things there that I think you can work on and build off of that you can take away as positives.
And that's what I was going to say. I was going to say the freshman play was a lot better than I expected. I think TJ Parker should start over Justin Maskell. I think that he proved enough. He's flashy. He's explosive. He's good with his hands. Same thing with Peter Woods. And I mean, it just proved that he's the real deal. He moves like he's a linebacker. Just to prove. And Tyler Brown, the same thing. I think, especially in the next 2 weeks against an opponent that's not as strong as Duke is, you can use Tyler Brown a little bit more. Maybe, if you're up a little bit, you can put him in some different slots, see what goes. But I think Will Shipley had a great game as well. And, that's the standard that you're going to get out of him. Besides, obviously the tip pass to kind of sell the game with Duke. I think Will Shipley had a great game as well. But, like you said, there's a little bit more negatives than positives that hopefully next week we'll talk a little bit more about the positives. Maybe, the offense comes out of its shell a little bit. The tackling gets a little better. But I think the freshman play and Shipley were kind of, the two biggest takeaways, at least for me, that were positive for Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, I think another positive that I saw was the offensive line played pretty decent. Like, I mean, I think they played well enough to, we ran the ball for 200 yards. I mean, that's partly the offensive line. I think again the defense played well enough to win. I feel like. I mean, we just couldn't throw the ball downfield. And that was the one disappointing really thing that frustrated me, because everything else is fixable. The fumbles are fixable. Everything else fixable. So I think I was really high on the offensive line, and I think they did a pretty good job. And the freshman play was good. So I mean that's kind of what I saw. I was mainly behind the camera, so I didn't really get to pay attention to the game like I wanted to, but yeah,
it did a phenomenal job, I might add.
Yeah, I mean, I tried, So,
yeah, the positives. I agree, a lot with what y'all said. The offensive line, I did think played well. You can't have people blocking two people when you get down the red zone. That's impossible. I mean, you can only block, is the man that you're supposed to block, and when they bring more than you can block, you got to be able to get rid of the ball. That's not on them. But overall, I thought, the pass protection, sometimes Duke brought some exotics that gave him some trouble. But you see that in week one with offensive line. But I thought from a physicality standpoint, especially the interior of the offensive line, I mean, they were moving Duke left and right between the B gaps and the A gaps. I mean, Clemson was able to find areas, and when they condensed, they were able to hit them on the perimeter. The lack of downfield passing is a problem. Even if you don't hit the shots, you need to take them to keep that defense softened up, to let them know that you will take the shot. You're not afraid to do it. Duke did it. Didn't hit a lot of them, but Clemson knew that they were going to take them, so they couldn't just load everybody up on certain downs. I did think defensively, the guys ran around, made plays, kept you in the game, even when it went bad, when you had quick change of possessions, whether it's the fumbles or whatever. I thought the defense kept you in it. Barrett Carter missed that one. Riley Leonard made a heck of a play. Sometimes you're going to run into guys that just make incredible plays. That was an incredible play. Mm-hmm. There's a reason he's the third quarterback on the board right now when you're looking at the NFL. Another thing, and this is something that you don't want to have happen, but I think it showed you kind of the leader that Cade Klubnik is. Even though Duke scored on that fumble, him running that kid down and making that tackle, I think that's something that when you turn on the film, that can be the difference in a game. My father played for Auburn and they played Alabama one year, and they gave up a pass. Guy was running, caught it for Alabama. My father played defense, and they had a backside corner, run him down and tackle him at the 2 going in. Next play, Bama fumbles the snap. Auburn recovers it, runs the clock out to win the game. So I think that showed you the kind of leader that Cade Klubnik is. I know a lot of people are down on Cade right now. He made some throws where I'm like, man, okay, I get it. You're out there ripping it. Like, I can see it. I can understand it. And then he makes some decisions, and that comes with that RPO. When doing it in practice is one thing. Doing it in the game when the bullets are flying and you're getting different looks and you're getting different leverages, that's a totally different thing. So there is some positives. As bad and as crazy as that game was, you still had a chance to win it. And I know against Duke, when we're not dribbling a basketball, that's not what you want to hear. But this isn't your grandfather's Duke football team. Well, heck, it maybe is with Spurrier, back when he played. But this isn't your father's Duke team that's just, diet Vanderbilt. I mean, Mike Elko's a heck of a coach. He's got some athletes out there. I know you look at the star rankings and coming out of high school, and that stuff does matter. But Duke was a well-coached football team. They ran really well. They were really physical at the point of attack, and you let them stay in it. And you let them stay in it, and you let them stay in it. Texas Tech did something similar against Wyoming. They had the better team. They were more physical. But the longer you let them hang around, the longer they start believing. And the more they start believing in one game, in one night, on the road, opening week, crazy things can happen. And that's what ended up going down.
I had a high school basketball coach. I'm sorry, Cliff. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, well, I could just tell. I was just going to say this one thing. I could tell that when Riley Leonard scored that touchdown, the whole stadium went nuts. And you could tell that the energy in the stadium just flipped on a dime. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like after that touchdown, it was almost like we didn't have a chance. And it was a really weird feeling. But that's what I felt when he scored that touchdown. I was just like, holy cow.
Well, I mean, momentum's a real thing. And in the game of football, it's momentum is gravity. I think what it did was it let Duke, not that the players didn't believe, but the fans, it let them know like, oh, wow. Like we're going to hang in this game. Like we could really hang in this game. We actually put the ball in the end zone. And it is deflating. I think it was deflating for Clemson because it kind of humanized that defense a little bit. Whenever you give up a big play, hey, maybe we don't just hop in the phone booth and come out and we're Superman. Maybe we come out sometimes and all of a sudden Homelander shows up.
Right. And Jake Griffin, I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. I try to be an eternal optimist during the course of a ball game, and my wife might disagree with that statement, but I do try. But when I'm thinking back to that game, it's 13-7, and as you mentioned, Clifton, Leonard breaks off that long touchdown run, the missed tackles there on the sideline, and the momentum and the energy in the stadium, it did flip. And you could feel that seismic shift starting to gravitate away from Clemson. But it's still a 13-7 ball game when you have first and goal from the 1 yard line with about 10 minutes to play. And you've got a chance to all of a sudden flip that momentum, tie the ball game a point after, and you're back in front. And I really did feel like had Clemson scored right there, had they not made that committed that second fumble, punch it in there, kick the PAT, go up 14-13. And I believe had they done that, I still think Clemson would have found a way to win that ball game.
Oh, right. And, I think that I think at least the Clemson fan in me, and, I was at, a couple of my friends were watching the game. The whole momentum shifted after that Moffa fumble. And, Cade did make the great tackle, but, they punched it in after that. And then, at that point, you're kind of just playing out of disparity. You throw an interception, Duke runs it again. So at that point, I feel the same with you, Garrett. I think if Clemson punched that in, they would have won. They would have kept it close. It would have been a nail biter. But honestly, Clemson would have that when they'd be 1-0 and they wouldn't be number 25 on the AP Top 25 poll. But, obviously things happen, things change. But like you said, football is a game of momentum. We even saw this last year, South Carolina, same thing. That Antonio Williams fumble, that fourth down where South Carolina scored the touchdown. It's a game of momentum at the end of the day. And, if momentum's on your side, that's the 12th man at the end of the day.
Yeah. Hey, can I say this too? Can I say this real quick? I just don't understand. And this is where I'd worry about Garrett Riley. How last year, when I'm watching TCU play Kansas State, do you go under center at the goal line? Now, you ended up not letting Max Duggan keep the ball, which I think was a huge mistake. You end up getting stuffed at the 1 and losing that game. But how are you able to go under center with TCU at the 1? And then when you're at Clemson, when you have even more dominant, in my opinion, type of athletes, you don't go underneath center and quarterback sneak it. I think one of the worst excuses of all time is, we don't work the center quarterback exchange under center during practice. We're a shotgun team. So you mean to tell me that you're athletic enough to run an RPO where I have the decision to hand it off, to keep it and run it, or to throw it against defenses, but I'm not athletic enough to put my hand underneath the center, take the ball, and get pushed forward when it's now legal to get the bush push into the end zone. I coached for 9 years, 6 at Division I level. That can be handled in pre-practice every day. You take 5 minutes in pre-practice to work under center, work your specials. Why are you turning 1st and goal from the 1 into 1st and goal from the 6? I'm a defensive guy. I hope that as a defensive guy, I hope they keep doing it. I don't understand why they keep doing it, but they keep doing it. And it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I feel like Clemson's done that for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. But going back to the Duke game, like if they make those 2 field goals, it's tied.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if the freshman makes the field goals, it's tied. And I mean, and if we score on that touchdown, we're up by 7. I mean, but I agree with you, Jake. Like I've said this for the past couple of years. Like, just go up under center. Like,
just work it every day. You have time.
Yeah.
You have tons of time. Work it during the
Right.
summer. I'm not asking you to put a Rubik's Cube together blindfolded, or I'm not asking you to go win American Ninja Warrior. I'm asking you to get up under center. Let's get two monsters behind you, and they'll just push you into the end zone. Like, this isn't some crazy, foreign experiment, that you're trying to pull off here. Like, I don't understand it, and I'll never understand it.
Yeah, it's one of those generational tenets of college football. It worked in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. It's going to work in 2023 when you're at the 1-yard line. Get the ball into the hands of your best running back or quarterback, for that matter. Get in behind 2 massive offensive linemen and just plow the ball 3 feet. And furthermore, you've got 4 plays to get the ball 3 feet doing that.
And if you can't get that, you deserve to lose. And you know what? He should have made those field goals, right? There's no excuse for getting that blocked and then shanking that other one. But you know how you avoid that? You stick the ball in the end zone. That's what you do. And that's Clemson's biggest problem at the end of the day. I felt awful for the freshman kicker, but you're on scholarship too, dog.
And Gunn, he was the number 3 ranked kicker in his high school class.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
So it's not as if this guy was somebody that you took as an afterthought. This was a place kicker that virtually every major program in the country wanted to sign coming out of high school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about the Duke game, but there comes a time where you just have to say it's over and done with. We lost. What did we learn from it? Now we're going to move ahead, and we're going to see what we can do to fix this going forward. And this week, the Tigers have their first home game. It's an in-state brethren coming into Death Valley, Charleston Southern. Now, on paper, this shouldn't be much of a contest, but again, that's why games aren't played on paper. We found that out on Monday night. So to talk very briefly about Charleston Southern and Griffin, let's just go down the line. I want everybody's thoughts on this. This can go one of 2 ways. Does the team get down, and do they just let the loss on Monday night catapult its way into an avalanche of failure? Or do they pick themselves up off the mat, and do they come out swinging at 2:15 on Saturday afternoon in Death Valley? If they do that, I think the game could probably turn into a rout pretty quickly, but that's not a given. So which Clemson team shows up on Saturday?
They're on the clock. They have 2 weeks before, obviously, that big game against Florida State. That is where they could turn their whole season around. I think that they come out of the gate firing. I think that it's the team that everybody has been wishing for, and Charleston Southern is the team to do it. They're a very young team, new head coach. They won by 3 against a Division II team last week. They only put up 13 points. They haven't beaten an FBS team by – I think it's been only twice where they've lost by an FBS team by less than a score. This is I think it's the perfect team to kind of experiment stuff on. I think, you go up early and then you start tinkering around with stuff, maybe plug in players, like I said, maybe a Tyler Brown. But I think at the end of the day, Clemson's going to come out with a multiple score win. I mean, we said that last time, but then again, experienced teams at home, you know what I say about them. You heard what I said about Duke last week. They usually don't lose at home, especially against a FCS team. So I think Clemson are going to come out of the gate firing, win by a couple scores, and they go into FAU with a better expectations than they were than this week.
Yeah, I agree with you, Griffin. I just think Clemson comes out and like I listened to some of the interviews today, and every one of them was like, "This is what we did wrong, and we're moving forward, and we're gonna change it." So it was all like they talked the good game, but can they do it in the game? And and like you said, this is the perfect opponent to do it against. And I think they come out 3 or 4 scores, maybe not that much, maybe 2 or 3 score win. And yeah, I'm going down a little bit because of last week, but like maybe 2 or 3 score lead. Yeah, who knows? But I again, I think this is a perfect team to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, pain. Just a lot of pain for Charleston Southern. They're coming down, going to Clemson to get a check. I think this game's going to be probably somewhere around 63-3. I think it's going to be a murder. You got to get your guys' confidence back. This is the perfect team to come in and do it. You're better at every position. They're just going to kind of be, for lack of a better term, happy to be there. It's going to be a nice experience for them. You get to travel, you get to eat good, stay in a nice hotel, and then you get to go out on that field and just get absolutely shoved in a locker. So Clemson's going to be pissed off. They want to get the swag back a little bit. And I think Dabo, he's going to let the dogs eat for a little bit, and then he'll call them off to get him some confidence. So, yeah, I don't know what the line's going to be in this game, but I'm probably going to take Clemson.
Right. So does Dabo, does he perhaps let the starters, does he let the big cats eat just a little bit longer than maybe he normally would under a similar circumstance, just to kind of recalibrate the mechanism and get those guys some confidence? You hate to say anybody is the sacrificial lamb, but unfortunately for Charleston Southern, they might have to be that sacrificial lamb to get Clemson going again for now and later on through the season.
Yeah, well, look, I'll say it. They're the sacrificial lamb. I mean, put them on the stage and start throwing vegetables at them. This is football. Somebody, you signed the paper, so you decided to show up and play. Yeah, look, I think they want some good tape, right? You want a good highlight film. You want 2 weeks of good highlight films to show that great highlight film before Florida State. Hey, look, this is us doing it. You only scored 7 points against Duke. You want to get in that red zone. You want to pound it. You want to show them, hey, we can do this. Yeah, it's against Charleston Southern, but look, it's mind games, man. 90% of life is 100% mental, whatever that Yogi Berra quote is. But when you look at Charleston Southern, they're coming down here. You're not special. You're just next, and they're gonna take one. They're gonna take a pretty big L.
And, Cade Klubnik, he said in post-game interviews following Monday night's loss, he said, and this is a paraphrasing here, but essentially he knows people are going to count this team out and they're going to write them off. And I think probably given the history of the last 2 years and scoring 7 points against Duke in the season opener, I think I don't know that you could really argue anybody who did that or who would say that. But at the same time, he firmly believes, and as he put it, there's going to be a sweet ending to this story, and this is just the first chapter that was written. And he's fully confident in this team. And you know what? It's sports. It's a fickle world that we live in. Anything can happen. So, certainly as fans, I think we're all pulling for Clemson. We're all pulling for Cade and the team to turn that around. We certainly hope that they do it. To what degree that happens or to what degree that transforms into, we'll just have to wait and see as the next few months go by, but certainly that's what we're hoping for. But it has to start somewhere. And Saturday at 2:15 in Death Valley, it's Charleston Southern, and that's where the journey – if Monday night wasn't the true beginning of the journey, then it has to start Saturday afternoon home.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm not counting this team out. I'm not pushing a panic button for another 2 weeks. If, Clemson blow out the next two teams, then I think that they still have the talent to keep up with Florida State. But if they don't show up in the next 2 weeks, then I'll be pushing that button down. And I will not be excited to go to that game. But we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see how they bounce back. If they do bounce back, who steps up, the whole nine. So we'll see what happens. But my hand's off the button right now.
Yeah, I think a game like Monday night will test you in many ways. And it'll either beat you down for the rest of the season or it'll tell what type of person you are or what type of player you are, because it'll either beat you down and you'll just cave in and, not play well, or you'll get up off the mat and you'll start punching. And I think this Clemson team has the fight and has the willpower to get up off that mat and start punching. And I would just hate to be Charleston Southern.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's one of those things where you play bad against Duke. You play good against Florida State and you beat them. Those same fans that are talking about how terrible you were will be the first ones to be running up to you with a Sharpie and a picture of you trying to get your autographs. So look, it's a long season. It's a marathon, not a sprint. The worst part of that game is that it was a conference game. You look at LSU, the way they played against Florida State, you're like, man, we lost, but everything's still in front of us. And look, everything's still in front of Clemson. They run the table. I don't think Duke's going undefeated in the conference. I think they're going to probably have at least 2 conference losses with the way that it looks. Who knows with Mike Elko and what they're doing over there. But everything that Clemson wants is still in front of them. If it's a lesson, it's truly not a loss. I think, like you guys said, you find out a lot about your team. You find out a lot about the people around you, about how everybody's good when you're winning. It's all fun when you go and you win by 35 points and it's easy to be happy and want to go the extra mile. You find out what you're really made of when the chips are down and somebody's got to step up and make some plays. So I think you'll learn a lot about this Clemson team. And look, they'll get their shot. They get another shot. It's a long season. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So I'm interested to see how Clemson comes back from it.
Yeah, amen to that. And we'll see about mid-afternoon on Saturday as the Tigers run down the hill for the first time in front of their home fans, whether they have put the Duke loss behind them, can they turn this ship around and sail it back to calmer waters? That's all going to be answered in pretty short order. But that's all the time we've got for this week here on Around the Paul. But before we sign off, again, Jake Crane from the Daily Wire, Crane & Company podcast. Thoroughly invite you to check them out on YouTube. They just do a great job. They talk college football, great breakdowns, and just sports in general. And Jake, true privilege to have you here on our show tonight. We appreciate the valuable insight, and you're always welcome anytime.
Well, guys, I appreciate you having me. Hopefully next time I come back, it's after a win. We can talk about how great the decision-making was in the red zone. And, man, the receivers were getting separation. But, no, I appreciate y'all having me. And, yeah, if you want to, head over to the YouTube page. It's Crane & Company, C-R-A-I-N and Company. We just hit 100,000 subs, so we're on the race to 200. So if you like college football, like the NFL, like sports talk the way it used to be before they started trying to divide all of us, come check us out. It's a good time. And, look, yeah, Clemson will figure it out. Y'all will be fine.
Absolutely. Well, again, thanks for coming on, and best of luck and all your endeavors, and hope you have a great rest of the week and a great Saturday of college football. So until next time, I'm Garrett Mitchell, Griffin Barfield, Clifton Kennedy, and Jake Crane, sensational guest this week. We appreciate him.
Yeah, thank you.
Until next week, Around the Paul is signing off. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.